I want to give a little bit of personal insight first. So I've been walking dogs for a long time. I've been working with animals. Honestly, I like to tell people my whole life, just because I grew up around animals professionally via family work and so on. I've worked primarily with exotics, but the last few years I've worked with a lot of canines and felines. I've worked as a veterinary assistant for quite a while. I've worked a lot of in and on jobs. I was a primary animal care specialist for a large pet chain store. Again, a lot of controversy with that, but it provides a lot of good experience and insight on how the industry works in animal care and pet care. And just something that I've come in contact with a lot is just average pet parents and all the other pet parents in between, right? Everyone is still very different. And I'll say we're at a peak in history where it's constantly changing and evolving, right? We're growing, the industry is growing, right? We have this massive rise of enrichment, a lot of big toys and puzzles, and a huge rise in fresh food and different feeding options and understanding nutrition. But primarily the reason why I want to talk about this today is dog walking in particular. And cats are kind of in there too, right? There's kind of this big rise of cat stimulation, because there's quite a big myth that cats don't need a lot of care and stimulation. They kind of take care of themselves. I'm yes, they are a bit more independent, but they still need large amounts of exercise and stimulation and things that are going to get them through the day, right? And we can talk more about that later on. But when it comes to dog walking, just something that I've noticed as a professional dog walker. I've been doing it for quite a few years, primarily part-time, but I've been leaning more into doing it full-time along with other aspects. Okay, so on the dog walking side, just something that I've noticed, and this is consistent with almost every single dog, besides maybe the little tiny ones, right? Is that they're not fully stimulated, they're not fully exercised after a walk. It's just not realistic, right? I would say half-hour walks on average. That's what people want. That's what they pay for midday. Let their dog get a little bit of exercise and potty break while they're gone at work, right? Typically 9 to 5, right? So majority walks, I would say, are half hour. And by the time we get back to the house, these dogs are commonly pulling away from the house, or just stopping and refusing to go in the house. They're not satisfied with what they're getting. They're very understimulated. Not to mention they're walking, in the same neighborhood around their block. It's the same route every day, which they will and do but at the same time, it's extremely repetitive. It's just not enough. See, and here's Rex. I'm trying to lead him back to the house, and he's been trying to lead me on a longer walk, but I can't give him a longer walk. The owner is paying for a half-hour walk. It's typical, and I have another walk scheduled right after, so I don't really have any room to make time for him. Come on, Rex. Good boy. I know. Very sad. Okay, so I'm in between walking dogs right now, refilling with a little Capri Sun. Not a sponsor. So I have some notes that I took with me today on my phone. So I might be going back and forth a few times because I want to make sure that I get the numbers right. But over a while of doing some research, I kind of was able to pull some notes and facts, just kind of as a showing of what I've seen, right? So though I've seen these professionally on a massive level, right? Unfortunately, when you work in animal care, you see a lot of abuse as well, which is something that you kind of have to understand how to deal with and live with, and not necessarily just go throughout your day normally, but you still kind of have to, no matter what you can do to help the animal out. But in most cases, like, things that you, an animal care professional, someone who's worked in the industry, whether that's veterinary, or even just dog walking, is there's a lot of kind of abusive level things that happen that the owners don't even realize is happening. And honestly, the dogs don't realize it's happening either, right? Like, it's things that are considered normal, right? Like, there's so many people have dogs that don't go on walks. They don't know what a walk is. They're just inside the house, and they have a fenced-in backyard, and their owners come home and leave, go to work, right? Go grocery shopping, whatever, and they just let them outside. They run around, play in the backyard, use the body, go right back inside, and that's about it. Right? So, some of these numbers are pretty intense. Statistically, right? And even though there are numbers around the area that I would have guessed that I seen, when you kind of realize how big it is on an overall level, it's just unfortunate, right? And so as the pet care industry evolves, we want to see those numbers lower, right? That's the hope. So, first thing isn't too huge, and we're going to talk about senior dogs a little bit. So 60% of dogs over the age of 11. So if you think of a senior, 7 and 8 is considered senior, right? It kind of varies between breed, but most brands will consider like 7 or 8 a senior dog plus, right? So dogs over the age of 11 have 60% of dogs over the age of 11 show major signs of cognitive decline, right? And luckily, those dogs are pretty old. They've lived a pretty mostly full life. So for the most part, that's not hugely shocking, right? That's probably pretty average. But then when you look at the physical side of things, so 80% of dogs over the age of 8, so 8 kind of being that senior gradient, 80% of dogs over the age of 8 suffer from some form of arthritis. There's a lot of different types of arthritis and joint issues, the major one. Now, 80%, right? But 20% of dogs over the age of 1. So I would consider, like, 1, you're still a puppy. You're still a puppy at that point. Over the age of 1, also suffer from arthritis. Right, and I have seen this on a pretty large level where people will adopt or get a puppy, right? But they don't actually have the care or effort to take care of it. They kind of just have the poor animal to have it, him or her, and it'll usually just end up in a small room, or more often, right, their kennel, for a year plus with no actual physical training, before often the dog is just abandoned or rehomed. So I think that's primarily the main cause, besides just lack of exercise. Okay, so getting into dogs as a whole, right? So 2 out of 3 dogs, I couldn't find like an accurate or good percentage, but 2 out of 3 dogs are overweight or obese, right? I think it was something, I feel like 2 out of 3 dogs overweight in general. I want to say it was like over 50% of those dogs are obese, like pretty heavily obese, right? And this is quite obvious when you're working as a VA, a veterinary assistant, right? Or even in any position in the veterinary field or professional field, right? So many of these dogs are just obese, and you can tell, like, a lot of it is dietary, but it's also equally exercise, right? And a lot of these dogs that are obese, also their nails are so overgrown, right? Because maybe the owner dog's never been trained, right? He's not walking outside. He's not doing things that a dog should be doing. And their nails are overgrown. Owner's not clipping them. We have a hard time clipping them. The dog has a really hard time with it, right? And that's a problem on multiple levels. But obesity and overweight and lack of muscle growth is also just a huge thing, especially for like working in sport breeds that aren't getting the level of exercise and stimulation that they need on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so that's that. And then 75% of dogs as a whole, which is a pretty big number. Luckily not like a massive number. It's still a pretty big number. 75% roughly of dogs have signs of depression, including chronic depression. So that's just they're not getting any of the proper stimulation that they need on a day-to-day basis. Okay, and then here's the big one. 99% of dogs, it's nearly every single dog, show at least one form of behavioral disorder or behavioral issue. And that is primarily caused by boredom and stress, which is, again, lack of proper stimulation on a day-to-day basis. Okay, I gotta get ready and go walk some more dogs. So I'm out here with Chewy. Chewy is French Bulldog. So we're not going to be walking for very long. We're going to be walking for about 20 minutes. He's kind of fast-paced right now. He's not normally... He gets like this for like the first 5-10 minutes and then he calms down. He's usually a pretty good walker, but... Anyways, so leading into this idea, I've had this idea, this concept for the last few years that I've kind of been mentally building. And I really want to take action on it. But basically, what I really want to create is more like fully stimulating walks that are long and that will encourage full, like, needed expression of natural behaviors, right? That will help reduce mental incline, right? So simple stuff like new sniff spots, longer sniffing periods, new smells, but also, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to cut out a lot of random space because I'm still getting used to this camera concept and I'm like, my brain keeps blanking, even though I've been focusing on education for years and I'm like, I feel like I'm really good at talking about things in the moment, but the camera is such a different aspect. So I'm really trying to get used to this new aspect. But anyways, so expressing full natural behaviors, mental stimulation, right? But also complete exercise. And not just like on pavements, but I want like full experience in the natural outdoors. So a variety of surfaces, right? So their body is getting, like, they're not only being grounded, right, but they're getting that full physical movement, right? So different surfaces like rock, sand, dirt, digging, probably walking at a variety of speeds, right? That also can determine purely based off the dog, right? But and swimming, right? And when they're using all of these full physical advancement, right? So not just a really long walk, right? They're burning all of those calories, helping with overweight and obesity, staying lean, muscle building, but also complete exercise on the joints. So we're going to be limiting arthritis, and other related joint issues. Okay, so granted, a lot of these things are caused by poor genetics, improper and unhealthy breeding, right? But primarily from my point of view, from what I've seen, is a lot of really healthy pure breeds are having the same problems. And I think it's really because a lot of people get breeds that just aren't fit for their lifestyle, or they just don't realize how much care they actually need, or they don't really understand like the differences between different types of care on that level. So like what I really want to do is I have this idea of doing like dog excursions, right? But like on a more complicated level, because if you go to a dog walking agency, they'll have excursions. They call them excursions. Anyway, so I actually started kind of looking into this at one point because I noticed that dog walking agencies were offering excursions, but it wasn't what I wanted, and I don't think it's fully what they need, right? Better than maybe a 20-minute sprint around the neighborhood, but overall it might not prevent a lot of these issues that I really want to try to prevent in these dogs. So what my walks are providing is time for fully expression, right? Not just sniffing, but climbing and digging, swimming when able. I have a whole list of things. It's hard for me to think of everything right now, right? And then also like I have additional add-ons that I want to be providing, just convenience of the whole situation, right? And after our walk, I'll do a normal, like a tick check, probably brush down to the fur if needed, paw wiping, but if you like, I'd be happy to, if needed, run them down to a bath and rinse them, make sure they're nice and clean before re-entering the home, right? So, because I think a lot of the circumstances why owners avoid these things is because they really just don't want to deal with it. Even, but here's my goal. I bounce around on a lot of different names because I want this community and this small business. I do want it to be really personal though, right? So after bouncing around for a while, I kept going back to the same name. I think I've decided on Izzy's Excursions. So kind of like long-ish, because Excursions is kind of a long name, but it's still like only 2 words and it kind of rolls off the tongue. And it's simple and it's personable because it tells you who I am and what I'm doing, right? In the long run, there's a lot of other things that I want to offer too, but I'm not going to talk about that right away because I don't know what things might change as this moves forward. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring Chewy back inside because we're done with our walk. I don't have any other walks scheduled right after this, so I'm letting him walk for a bit longer than usual. I'm going to make sure he gets some water and some treats after we get back inside. But I really want to build this community. It's very important to me. Very passionate about it. I think it's extremely important for the pets that we can get involved. And even just pet parents overall that might see this and start doing research and becoming aware. And maybe they get a pet, or they have gotten a pet, it's a puppy, or they have had pets before, but they've had a lot of issues in the past with decline, mental or physical, whatever it may be, and they want to just follow me as a way, because I want to just do education in general. So like what these walks should entail, how long should you be walking for, how often you should do it, because it'll vary between your dog as well. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you had I want to know any thoughts on this. Anyone that might possibly see this video. Yeah, I've kind of just been rambling on, so I think I'm going to end the video here. Thank you for watching. If you've watched the whole video, I'm sure it's an absolute just mess of poorly tamed information. Still getting used to the camera thing. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Get outside, walk yourself and your dog.